Hear our prayers. Amen. Everyone, again, welcome. I'm Lance. This is The Gathering. I'm so glad that you're here today. So it is Mother's Day. We're going to talk about Mother's Day-y kind of things. I'm specifically going to be focusing on today the experience of having a mother, right? The experience of having a mother. I do that for a couple different reasons. So one, as you may have noticed on your attendance card today, is a checkbox that says, I want Lance to buy me a cup of coffee. And so I spend about 4 or 5 hours a week hanging out with people who've asked for exactly that. We'll go down to Buongiorno or to my office. We'll have a cup of coffee. We'll visit. And what's going to happen over the course of our conversation is I am going to ask you, who are you? Where are you from? Unless you come and say, this is what I want to talk about, I just want to hear your story. And inevitably, that is always going to get back to, who are your parents, right? How were you raised? What was your experience? I want to tell you that if you feel like, my family, there were a lot of ups and downs. We didn't exactly have a perfect Norman Rockwell experience or a Hallmark card kind of experience. I want to tell you that's okay because nobody does. I have learned, I can say that with authority. We'll talk a lot about your experience and what was growing up, and we'll talk about your parents and what you've learned and what's shaped you. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a good listener. I just want to hear your story. And one of the things that I've noticed over time, again, I'm no expert, but one thing that's really sticks out to me is over and over again, people will talk the most about what they were taught, right? By their parents or specifically, by their moms or things along those lines. They'll talk about lessons that really, they just remember getting the lesson, right? I'll never forget, I got a lesson once from my mom. These kind of things always happen in the car. I don't know if that was your experience. My mom imparted a lot of wisdom in the car because I wasn't allowed to leave. And I was literally belted in. And I remember I was in elementary school and I was having a really bad I was exhibiting very early on a tendency to toot one's own horn. And I remember my mom told me, she looked over and she goes, Lance, if you are actually good at anything, you won't have to tell people because they'll already know. Oh. I remember that, right? Over and over again, people will talk about things that we were taught, right, by our parents. But the amazing thing, and this is what I've just kind of figured out over time, this is what we'll share, but when we actually talk about what influences us from our parents, right, particularly from our moms, what it is that shapes us, what it is that changes the way that we act or think or are in the world today, it's very little about what we were taught, and it is all about what we caught from our parents. Right? And by what we caught from our parents, or particularly our moms, I mean the things that you just kind of absorbed, right? The things that you just kind of saw or witnessed or experienced, right? People will talk about what they were taught, but when they actually get into what it is that influences them today, they'll focus on what they caught. And the vast majority of these things are really positive, right? They're actually really good. And so I want to share with you kind of my own experience about this. So a couple weeks ago, my wife and I bought a house. We bought our first house. It's over in Woodhaven, which is a neighborhood on the east side. A really cool little house. It was in great structural condition. It's from 1974. It had one owner, and I know that they loved all their decorations because they changed nothing. Nothing. What do you guys want? Are any of you trying to recreate a movie set from 1974? Do you want horse wallpaper? I got it. Right? If avocado comes back in, I'm set. Does anyone want linoleum? I got it for you. Right? And so we knew the house is great, and we're so thankful, and we're so excited. My parents were so excited for us, but I knew that I was going to have to do a little bit of the work that I could do. Just had to get ready to actually move, and painters, and popcorn ceilings, and all that kind of stuff. And so work needs to be done. And so I had told my parents, weeks ago, when we were still under contract on this house, if it all goes through, this kind of first week in May, I'm not going to go to work during the week. I got to take the week off to work on the house, right? And so they're on the phone. My parents were always on party line at their house, right? And so we're talking, and they both say, can we come? Can we come and help? Right, my parents are retired. They live on Lake Travis, which is just outside of Austin, about 4 hours away. And they immediately ask, can we come help? If you're going to take a week off work and be working on the house, doing all this stuff, can we help? Can we bring tools? Can we bring a trailer? And they do that for two reasons. One, because they're the kind of people who want to help. Right? They're the kind of people whose love language is showing up and helping out, right? Are you sweating? We want to sweat alongside you. Are you working? We want to work alongside you. That's just who they are. The second reason they wanted to volunteer is because I'm their son, and they know me, and they know I need help. They just know it, right? They have 34 years of witness, right? A couple of years ago, and this is a true story, we're at the house that we're at right now, my rent house, and I was having a problem, a very visible problem to the entire neighborhood, that I couldn't get the water to stop streaming out of the spigot in the front of our house, and it's flooding the lawn, and it's flooding the flower bed, and I'm cranking on it, and I can't get it to stop. At one point, my neighbor comes by, and he stops his car because he sees me, and I have like a wrench. I'm trying to like shut off the water at the front of the house, right? And so his name's Carl. He's an awesome guy. Carl comes, he's like, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, it's all freaking, I can't figure out what's stopping me. And he comes over and he realizes that the problem with my house is that I have confused righty-tighty and lefty-loosey for a half hour. Master's degree. Right? I need help. And so my parents know that, and so they come and they're helping out all week long. My parents, like literally, they were tired. They're just like sweating in a house all week long. I can't thank them enough. And we're pulling out carpet and tack strips, and we're rewiring ceiling fans and things like that. It's right back to me being 8 years old again. The only thing I'm good for is holding the flashlight and handing my dad wrenches. Right? We're right back to that place. We're doing all this work, and I do something that I can uniquely qualify to do, and that is go get us something to eat. And so I've left, and I'm thinking about, of course, I'm spending all week with my mom and my dad. I'm thinking about a Mother's Day sermon, so of course, I'm just like X-raying our relationship, trying to think of something about this. And I'm thinking a lot about the ideas of what we've caught from our parents, right? And the number one thing that I have caught from my mom, right? She never taught me. She never sat me down and expressed the importance of this. But the number one thing that I've caught from my mom that I am so thankful for and has shaped me to who I am today is a love for people. A love of hearing people's stories. Just because they're people and because they're interesting. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you passionate about? What are you into? Right? I love that so much. And I have caught that passion from my mom. She has never met a stranger. She's one of those people. And I have a perfect example of that because I came back from Brahms, which was located just down the street. Thank the Lord. And so I get back home and my mom goes, we'll call her Joni. She says, I met Miss Joni across the street. And I was like, and there's, a couple houses, a little cul-de-sac. And I said, oh, which one is that one? She says, it's that one. She's really sweet. She's so-and-so years old. She lived in Arlington for 40 years. She moved here 4 years ago. She's a retired school teacher. She has 2 kids. One lives in that neighborhood, one lives in that neighborhood. Here's how many kids they have. This is what they're into. Her husband passed away a year ago. It's really sad, but the neighborhood's been really helping her up. You should help take care of her. Here's her phone number. Textbook my mom, right? By the way, Joni loves what you've done with the house. And I'm like, how does she know? We haven't done anything to the exterior. And she goes, oh, I gave her a tour. At the time it took me to go get a burger, right? She's met this woman. She's learned her whole life story. She's walked me through my house, right? That's just who she is, right? And I love her for that. Why do you think one of the first things I ever did in starting this whole place is make it incredibly easy for me to get to know you and have a cup of coffee? Because I want to hear your story. Right? Because I genuinely care. It's not like a fake thing. Like I'm fascinated by who you are, by your experiences, by what shaped you, what you're passionate about, your ups, your downs. I caught that from my mom, right? It's positively shaped me into who I am today. Can I be honest with you though? Not everything I've caught from my mom is awesome, right? Real talk here, right? She's not streaming, it's safe. And not everything I've caught from my mom has been simple or easy, right? I'll give you an example, and this is something we talk about openly in our family, so I'm not divulging any secrets. My mom is a worrier, right? She is a 3rd-degree black belt, ninja, superstar worrier, right? That is who she is. She is capable of worry. The best story I can give to give you an example of this is when we moved back home to North Texas. I was in 2nd grade. We moved into a neighborhood, the safest neighborhood that's ever existed on the planet Earth, right? The safest neighborhood. Nothing's ever happened, nothing ever will happen in the neighborhood in which I was raised. And our house was on a street, and there was a cul-de-sac down the way. And the way that the yards were shaped, if I was in like the bottom left corner of that cul-de-sac riding my bike with my friends in a cul-de-sac surrounded by my friends and their parents and all of their neighbors, there was like a 10 square yard area where you might not be able to see me, right? Or what my mother would call the zone of impending death. Right? And so her solution in second grade, right, when I'm obviously self-conscious because this is what I'm working with, and I'm just trying to fit in and make friends, I'm the new kid in the neighborhood, in addition to the helmet and the elbow pads I am already required to wear when I'm riding my bike, she has also installed on the rear of my bicycle a flag. A 7-foot orange flag that I have to ride around with in the neighborhood so that she can maintain eye contact no matter where I am because she's worried, right? She's worried. I think her imagination was that she would see the flag circling and then see it stop and like shake and fall to the ground, at which point she would spring into action. I don't know what her plan was. She's a worrier, right? Always been a worrier. Worrier when I was in elementary school, worrier when I was in junior high, worrier when I was in high school, worrier when I was a young adult. I remember having a conversation with her. This worrying always impacted me, right? And I caught it, right? It's turned me into a worrier. It's turned me into an anxious person. Worry and anxiety is something I've struggled with my entire life. I continue to struggle with today. It was just kind of baked into who I was and how I was raised, right? And no one celebrates that, right? That's a bum deal. We wish it wasn't the case. It's just the truth. I'm working on it. And it used to really bug me. I remember a conversation I was having in my early adulthood, and I was changing my life pretty significantly, right? I had a very clear path. I had a career. Everything had kind of been on one smooth stream: education, college, major, career, everything else. And I'm throwing it all the winds, right? I'm unsatisfied by that. I'm feeling a call to ministry. I'm wanting to pursue all these crazy ideas, right? Things are going very different. And so, of course, when I'm talking to my mom about it, she is worried, right? About how this could go, about what this could mean. And she's expressing all this worry to me, and I'm starting to take it pretty negatively. I remember having a conversation. I'm feeling like, do you not trust me? Do you not believe in me? Do you not think I can do this? Like, I was taking her worry very negatively, right? And it was a difficult conversation. I remember getting mad at her. And so we resolved that conversation. And then I remember later on, maybe it was the same day, maybe it was the next day, I don't remember. But we were having a conversation, and we were talking about what's always been our favorite thing to talk about. When I was a little kid to today, to the end of my days, my favorite thing to talk about my mom has always been her dad. Her dad. I never got to meet because he passed away very suddenly when my mom was 12. And he sounds like an awesome guy. He's just this like person that everyone in the community loved, the whole family loved. His name was J.H., not like James Henry, just the letter J and the letter H. How cool is that? J.H., and he went by Moss Crenshaw. Is there a more Texas name on the face of the planet? No, get out of here. Moss Crenshaw was my granddad. He went to SFA. He was a fighting lumberjack out in East Texas. He is in their athletic hall of fame for both baseball and basketball. How cool is that? Obviously, genes don't travel everywhere. He was also voted most handsome at his college 2 years in a row. How cool is that? Obviously, genes. No. So, most handsome in his college, athletic hall of fame. He was an officer in the Navy in World War II. If you were one of the guys who's getting shipped onto a boat in the Pacific Theater, he's the guy who made you exercise and run laps on the dock. He was an incredibly cool guy. He was in administration. He was a superintendent of schools, a pillar in his community. He was a superintendent of schools in East Texas during the times of integration and reform in the civil rights movement, and has a record that all of us can be very proud of. When he passed away suddenly down in the eastern area of Houston and Sheldon, where he was the superintendent of schools, there is a stadium and a street named after him, right? He's this patriarch. He's this huge, larger-than-life member of our family. My mom, of course, loves him so much, idolizes him. He's her dad, right? Much beloved by people everywhere. Passes away when she's 12. And so we're having a conversation, and the conversations we've always had about my grandfather always leave me feeling like, man, I wish I got to know my grandfather, right? What a great guy. I wish I had that experience. We're talking. And for the first time ever, I asked my mom about more what it was like to go through that. And she says, yeah, it was really hard. It was really tragic. It was really difficult. I guess that's one of the reasons I've always been such a worrier, because I lost my dad suddenly when I was 12. And I realized that things outside of your control can happen. And so I've always been a worrier. And I'm on the phone, it's over 10 years ago, and I just I've always thought about it in terms of me, right? My mom, I never got to meet my grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. For the first time in my life, I realized that my mom was a person. Does that make sense? How embarrassing is that? I was in my 20s, right? For the first time in my life, I realized my mom was a whole person. I realized that she had a childhood, that she had difficulties, that she had relationships, that she had dreams and ambitions. Yeah, she's my mom. That's an important but a small part of who she is, right? I got to see just a glimpse as a woman who lost her dad when she was 12. Of course she's going to worry. Of course she's going to carry that for the rest of her life. That conversation, and more accurately, my ability to see a little bit of my mom as a real person, entirely transformed our relationship. And all of a sudden, that worry, which I used to make fun of her about in good times and used to kind of resent in bad times, for the first time, I realized she's an actual person with gifts and weaknesses, with positives, with negatives, right? Doing their best. And transformed our relationship, right? If you're a kid here today, whether you're 2 or 102, your mom was a real person, right? More than just your mom. A woman, right? Positive experiences, negative experiences. Graces and strengths, difficulties as well, right? A whole person doing their best. So I want to talk about a biblical example of this. In order to do so, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of background. We got a lot of names that are flying around, so I need to give you just a quick genealogy to make sure we're all on the same page. A lot of the story of Israel, particularly in this time, a little over 3,000 years ago, is focused on what we call the patriarchy. There's a man named Abraham. He has a wife named Sarah. They have more than one child, but we're specifically going to be focusing on their son Isaac. Isaac had a wife named Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah together had twins, Jacob and Esau. Both of them go on to have huge families. I want to be talking about this, and I want to specifically be talking about the story of Rebekah. And can I be honest with you? I think Rebekah gets kind of wronged by the Bible, right? I think Rebekah, it's kind of unfair because the number one story that we know about Rebekah, the number one thing about Rebekah that's preached about, that's taught about, that is flannelgraphed in Sunday school classes, is probably not Rebekah's proudest moment, right? Like the equivalent story that happens would be like the story of when I was supposed to be watching my son, and instead I was hanging out with my buddy watching videos on our cell phones, and he fell off the second step in our backyard and busted up his face. I mean, yeah, that technically happened, but don't let that be the number one story you tell about me being a father, right? The one story about Rebekah that gets told over and over and over again, this is no way the one story that she once told, but that's the one we have. So I want to read that today. It's in Genesis 27, verses 1 through 17. One of the things that can happen when we're new to reading the Bible is we can immediately default into thinking that every story in the Bible is prescriptive and means we should act exactly in that way. That's not the shape here, right? What's happening is this is much later in their life. Isaac is old, nearing his death, and it's come time to give a blessing to Jacob and Esau. Esau's the oldest. They're twins, but Esau was born just moments before, and in their tradition, the oldest child receives a blessing. It's basically the passing on of the rights and the responsibilities for the leadership of the family, right? And words have power. Giving the blessing is important. Esau's been looking forward to this for his entire life, most likely. And Rebekah works together with Jacob, who's always been her favorite. His preferences aligned with hers. She works together with Jacob to steal Esau's blessing for Jacob. This is what happens. Genesis 27, 1 through 17. When Isaac had grown old and his eyesight was failing, he summoned his older son Esau and said to him, "My son?" And Esau said, "I'm here." Isaac said, "I'm old and don't know when I will die. So now take your hunting gear, your bow and quiver of arrows, go out to the field and hunt game for me. Make me the delicious food that I love and bring it to me so I can eat. Then I can bless you before I die." Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau went out to the field to hunt game to bring back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I just heard your father saying to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and make me some delicious food so I can eat, and I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die.' Now, my son, listen to me, to what I'm telling you to do. Go to the flock and get me 2 healthy young goats, so I can prepare them as the delicious food your father loves. You can bring it to your father, he will eat, and then he will bless you before he dies." Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, "My brother Esau is a hairy man, but I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me and thinks I'm making fun of him? I will be cursed instead of blessed." His mother said to him, "Your curse will be on me, my son. Just listen to me. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made the delicious food that his father loved. Rebekah took her older son to Esau's favorite clothes, that were in the house with her, and she put them on her younger son Jacob. On his arms and smooth neck, she put the hide of young goats, and the delicious food and the bread she had made, she put into her son's hands. God speaks to us through the reading of Scripture. Thanks be to God. Jacob goes on, dressed like this, goes to his father, confuses him, gets his father to give him the blessing. Right? I wanted to stop the scripture reading there because one of the things that people don't realize when they're talking about Jacob the trickster, they don't realize how much of that his mother was involved in. Right? I got to be honest with you. I've always read that story through the lens of Esau because I'm two things. I'm both the older brother and I am the one with the hairy arms. Right? I kind of navigate myself in that story seeing through Esau's eyes. Now I'm a husband and a father, and so I kind of look at the story a little bit like Isaac now, and I'm just trying to imagine what it is to be talking to your wife at the end of the day and be like, hey, remember earlier in the day when I was blind and dying, and you worked with our son to trick me into giving the blessing to somebody else? What's the deal, dude? Right? I kind of see it through that way. It's really easy to look at Rebecca and blame her and make her a one-dimensional character, right? To put on her something that doesn't rest on her shoulders. I'm not saying that what she did was right, far from it. But I'm saying one of the things the Bible is really bad about, and that we're really bad about in our own lives, is making people two-dimensional characters. Right? Only looking at them through the lens of what they've done to us or how they make them feel, right? Instead of realizing they're full three-dimensional characters with full lives and experiences. We don't know a whole bunch about Rebecca, right? But we do know a number of things. And the first thing about Rebecca that we get exposed to her is the story of how she came to enter this. And we're going to call it her proposal. The story is usually told through the eyes of the male characters. But let me tell you the story in the Rebecca-centric way of doing it. Rebecca lives in a village, and she's a young girl, maybe 14, maybe 15 years old, right? And she goes down to the local well to draw water for her family, and she sees a stranger traveling who's stopped by the well to get some water. And so she's been raised in a culture of hospitality and caring for others. So she says, can I draw you some water? And he says, yes, please. So she draws some water, gives it to the traveler. She realizes he has camels who are probably also thirsty. So she says, can I draw some water for your camels and give it to them too? And he says, yes. And he says, it's so good that you said that because actually I'm a servant of a foreign man named Abraham who's incredibly wealthy. And he has a son named Isaac. And I've been sent to this town to find a wife for Isaac. And I prayed to God and I said, God, if there's a woman that you want me to have marry Isaac, then please tell her to draw me some water and draw the camels some water. So when that happens, I'll know that that's the person that Isaac is supposed to marry. And you just did that. So come on, let's go move and marry a stranger. At 14 or 15 years old. They go together to talk to her father and her older brother, and they hear this and they say, that sounds like awesome news. I don't care what kind of culture you're raised in or what your expectations for finding a husband are in any time or any place. That is terrifying. Is it not? And in this episode of her proposal and going to start a new life in this foreign land, she has to learn strength. She becomes a strong woman. And Jacob and Esau, raised in her household, will catch that every single day of their lives. And it will be a blessing to them. And it will be a resource for them. Both of them are going to experience times of great struggle, times of great fear, times of great hardship. And the strength that they catch from Rebecca will be a blessing to them over and over and over again. There's a second episode that happens. Isaac moves the family. Isaac moves the family to a new region, owned by foreign rulers. But he's got a problem. See, he moves his entire family, which includes Rebecca, to this new land. But the issue is Rebecca is super attractive, right? Rebecca's looking good. In fact, so good that Isaac is convinced that these foreigners are just going to kill him so that they can take Rebecca to be their own wife. Now, he doesn't think we shouldn't move there. What he does say is, don't worry. I'll tell everybody you're my sister so that when they take you, they won't have to kill me to do it. How do you like my plan? Right? That's what Rebekah experiences, probably in her 20s, right? We hear from the story, not because of anything Isaac does, but because of a little bit of goodness in the foreign people she's never actually taken. But her husband betrays her that way, right? Now, I don't know if you think about that as a betrayal, but anytime your husband offers you up to foreign leaders, it's a betrayal, right? And through that, she has to learn resilience. She is a resilient woman. She is a survivor. And her sons, Jacob and Esau, will learn resilience from her and over again in their lives. That will be a blessing to them. That will enable them to face what God has for each and every one of them. They will have caught resilience from their mom. And now, when you reflect on the experience that she has with Isaac, right, at this moment, right, coming up at the situation where it's time to receive the blessing, she acts in a way where what she teaches to Isaac and he catches and repeats over and over and over again in his life is the idea that, look, you got to look out for yourself sometimes, right? Sometimes you got to bend some corners. Sometimes you got to break some rules. You always need to be looking out for number one. That's what she teaches Isaac in that moment. That's what he catches from her. But let me ask you, can you blame her? Can you blame her? I'm not saying it's right. I'm certainly not supporting it. I'm certainly not saying it's correct, but I'm saying she's a three-dimensional person who has been betrayed and who has been abandoned. She has experienced hurt and pain, and yes, she acted in a way that I guarantee you if she could, she would take it back, but she can't, and it's what happened. And her sons caught that from her. And it damages their relationship. At one point, Jacob has to leave. He's so scared that Esau is going to kill them. It leads from separation for their families for decades. And then later on, those adult men, those adult siblings take a look at the damage that has been done in their relationship and the things that they caught from their parents, positive and negative, and they set the negative aside and they reconcile. They stop looking out for number one. They start loving each other. They start trusting each other. They start supporting each other. They start making up for lost time. So many things that they caught from their parents were blessings and gifts to be used over and over again, and some of them were the byproducts of their mom's own difficult life, and over time, they just let them go. Do you see where I'm going here today? Do you see where I'm leading you here today? What did you catch? Right? What did you catch over and over and over again? Never explicitly said, what did you catch? And what did you catch that is a blessing to you and is a gift to you and you thank God for? What did you catch that is so wonderful that you hope to pass it on to everyone who meets you for the rest of your life? And what did you catch? Because you were raised by a real person facing real difficulties. What did you catch that it's time to let go? And here's the next question. Those of you who are parenting, those of you who are grandparenting at the moment, those of you who are teaching kids or leading kids, those of you who are teachers, those of you who are leaders, those of you who are neighbors, those of you who are aunts and uncles, those of you who are around people who are learning and forming who they are every single day, what are they catching from you right now? What are they catching from you? Are they catching that life is good and that possibilities are endless and that through Christ Jesus they are loved for exactly who they are? Are they catching that? I mean, you can teach them that, right? But are they catching that? Are they catching that they are beloved and that they are worthy and that so is everybody else? Are they catching that? What are they catching from us? What have we caught that we're thankful for, that we appreciate, and what is it time to let go? Jesus Christ, and offering his grace and accepting each and every one of us, promises that in him you are a new creation. You are born again. What happened in your past no longer has hold over you. You can give thanks for what you've received, that you want to celebrate and hold dear, and that which it is time to let go, you may. Because in him all things are new for you. To all the mothers who have loved us, we give thanks. To all the mothers who have shaped us, we share our appreciation. For all the things that we have caught, we love you. For all the things that in the midst of doing their best, maybe it's time to let go. May we release them for the purposes of our good lives and their good lives, all to the glory of our God. Let us pray. Great and loving God, we see over and over again in your stories real people with real lives, real people who do their best, and in so many ways mirror your love and your grace, your kindness and your goodness, and in so many ways fall a little short. God, for all the lessons that we've been taught and have caught that have shaped us positively, given us hope and life abundant, we give you thanks. And for all the things that were passed on to us that we wish to let go, God, give us the strength to do exactly that, so that we may see face to face, eye to eye, soul to soul, all the people who surround us, our mothers, their mothers, friends, family. God, you are remaking all things, all relationships, all lives, through the glory and power of your Son, Jesus the Christ. And in all that we do, let us follow him as we pray the words that he taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.